2008, New Orleans, Louisiana. It was a late night on any given Saturday weekend. My cousin went to Pirates Alley. Inside the bar, we were treated to absinthe and noticed 5 vampires sitting at the bar, drinking absinthe as well, one of which was the occultist Constantino, he called himself, calling himself the occult version of Quagmire. He discussed his brotherhood in the dark arts of Saturn. This would be one of many vampire encounters I would treasure and adore in my experiences of living in New Orleans, Louisiana, including the meeting of Lord Chaz. Right now you have the Vampire Cafe, as well as many stores, and of course the folklore rich. Bonjour and benvenue, mon ami. Thank you again for joining me in the Wicked Webs We Weave podcast. I'm your host, Ryan McKern, and tonight we venture into the vampire lore of New Orleans, Louisiana specifically, and its history and roots. Sit back and dwell in the proverbial darkness. Thank you again for joining me in the Wicked Webs We Weave. New Orleans' unique culture is a perfect breeding ground for vampire lore. Its blend of French, Spanish, African, and Caribbean influences, paired with a dark and mysterious history, creates an atmosphere ripe for the tales of the supernatural. New Orleans and vampires are forever linked, thanks to its Gothic architecture, mist-shrouded streets, and vibrant storytelling traditions. New Orleans during the 18th and 19th centuries source, which can be found at www.hnoc.org. Vampire myths are ancient and widespread across Europe, with the earliest tales emerging from Slavic and Romanian folklore. These stories were brought to the New World by immigrants who settled in New Orleans during the 18th and 19th centuries. The city's status as a part of the entry for many different cultures helped blend the old world tales and local lore. The European settlers brought with them a tradition drenched in folklore, including fearsome tales of blood-sucking creatures that roam the night. In Slavic cultures, vampires are often seen as revenants of evil beings, suicides or witches, but they could also be created by a malevolent spirit, possessing a corpse or being bitten by another vampire. These creatures were typically depicted as bloated with blood, with a ruddy or dark complexion, or far from the suave, charismatic vampires of modern fiction depicts. The influence of French and Spanish colonization. New Orleans was founded in 1718 by the French and later became under Spanish control, before reverting to French rule briefly and then becoming part of the United States in 1803. The French and the Spanish brought their own vampire myths and legends, which intertwined with local stories and African spiritual beliefs brought by enslaved. French folklore introduced them to the revenant, a term that broadly encompasses the undead, including vampires. These revenants were sold and returned to the grave to haunt the living, often driven by an insatiable thirst for blood. Spanish folklore contributed tales of El Vampiro, a creature that lurked in the shadows, preying on the unsuspecting. Historical accounts and alleged vampire activity. Several historical accounts and urban legends suggest that New Orleans has been a hotspot for vampire activity. While these stories are often shrouded in mystery and skepticism, they add to the city's eerie charm. New Orleans, the city's storied past includes shadowy figures like John and Wayne Carter vampires, infamous names whispered in hushed tones as part of the vampires in New Orleans history. The Carter brothers were allegedly to have kept victims chained and drained of blood, a chilling tale that blurred the line between folklore and reality. For more information on the brothers Carters, please see my previous episodes of the Wicked Webs We Weave. The history of New Orleans vampires is deeply rooted in the city's folklore. During the 18th and 19th centuries, the port city was a hub for trade and immigration, bringing with it tales from Europe and the Caribbean. Many of these stories centered on supernatural beings, and New Orleans' shadowy streets seem like a natural habitat for vampires to thrive. One of the most famous legends is tied to the French Quarter vampire, where visitors often hear about the haunting tales surrounding historic landmarks, like the Lalaurie Mansion, nearby on Royal Street. Vampires in Louisiana are said to have congregated in secret societies, shrouded in mystery. Today, these legends are kept alive through ghost tours and books that delve into the New Orleans vampire stories, blending historical accounts with imaginative fiction. Real vampires in New Orleans, the question. And are there vampires in New Orleans? Has intrigued believers and skeptics alike. Modern tales suggest a vibrant vampire society in New Orleans, with underground communities claiming to embody the spirits of these immortal beings. While their existence may not involve literal immortality, many members adopt the lifestyle and aesthetics of vampires, adding to the city's allure. Some claim to have seen real vampires in New Orleans, attending secret gatherings or lurking in the shadow corners of the French Quarter. These individuals, often self-proclaimed vampires, feed into the myths while drawing visitors from around the world to explore the legends in New Orleans for themselves. The image of New Orleans vampire has been immortalized in popular culture, particularly through Anne Rice's The Vampire Chronicles. Her Vampire Chronicles series, starting with Interview with the Vampire in 1976, brought the city's vampire legends to a global audience. Rice's vivid description of New Orleans and its gothic atmosphere helped cement the city as a central location for vampire lore. Anne Rice's portrayal of the vampires was revolutionary, transforming them from monstrous figures into complex, tragic beings. Her characters, such as the brooding Louis Dupont de Law and the charismatic Lestat, navigating a world of internal life, grappling with their humanity and monstrous nature. The atmospheric setting of New Orleans, with its decaying grandeur, shadowy alleys, and historic cemeteries, provided the perfect backdrop for these timeless beings. New Orleans has been featured in numerous films and TV shows centered around vampires, further popularizing its connection with these creatures. Movies like Interview with the Vampire in 1994, TV shows like The Originals, have showcased the city's haunted streets, historic mansions, and eerie cemeteries, enhancing its reputation as a hotspot for vampire enthusiasts. The Originals, a spin-off of the popular series The Vampire Diaries, is set in New Orleans and delves into the lives of the McCallion family, the original vampires. With legends such as the Carter Brothers, the Casket Girls, the Ursulines Convent vampires, please see my previous episodes of The Wicked Webs We Weave. One of the most influential figures in modern vampire literature is Anne Rice. New Orleans home to a vibrant vampire community that organizes events, gatherings, and rituals. This community includes sanguinarians, who consume small amounts of blood from willing donors, and psychic vampires, who believe they can absorb energy from others. The community emphasizes the content and consent, safety, and mutual respect among its members. The New Orleans Vampire Association, NOVA, is a prominent group within the community founded in 2005. NOVA works to provide support and resources for self-identified vampires and their allies. The organization also engages in charitable activities, such as feeding the homeless, highlighting the community's commitment to mutual aid and its positive social impact. It has been immortalized in popular culture, particularly through Anne Rice's The Vampire Chronicles. Her novels, starting with the Interview with the Vampire, solidified New Orleans as a quintessential vampire city. Rice's evocative description of the city's streets, cemeteries, and mansions brought a modern twist to New Orleans mythology and surrounding vampires. Beyond literature, television shows like The Originals and movies set in the city have further cemented the connection between New Orleans and vampires, drawing legions of fans to visit the Crescent City in search of their favorite haunts. The New Orleans French Quarter vampire legend is central to the city's supernatural reputation. Tales of nocturnal predators lurking in the French Quarter date back to its early days. With the aforementioned John and Wayne Carter vampires are retold on tours to this day, with guides recounting eerie encounters and unsolved mysteries. The Carter story in particular paints a chilling and picturesque, macabre, of blood drained in the blood of New Orleans. Vampire stories in New Orleans often include elements of truth blended with fiction, making them all the more captivating. Walking tours through the French Quarter highlight these tales, bringing visitors face to face with the chilling yet fascinating lore of New Orleans vampire history. New Orleans legends from voodoo priestess to the undead contribute to the reputation as one of the most haunted cities in the world. Much like the myths of vampires, thrive because they are tapped into the city's scene of mystery and the human fascination with the unknown. Visitors often come for the architecture and cuisine, but they stay for the stories. The Crescent City's New Orleans folklore serves as a living reminder of its post where the fact and fiction merge seamlessly. The New Orleans vampire history is not just a tale of immortal beings, but also a reflection of the city's ability to reinvent itself while staying true to its roots. One of the most notable events, and one that I've had the most honor of attending multiple times, organized by the vampire community, is the Endless Night Vampire Ball, held annually in New Orleans on Halloween weekend. This event tracks vampires, goths, and enthusiasts from around the world, featuring elaborate costumes, performances, and rituals. The Endless Night Vampires Ball is often described as a mix of masquerade, ball, rock concert, and occult ritual. Attendees don elaborate gothic attire, complete with fangs and capes, and participate in a night of dancing, socializing, and performances. The event's atmosphere is one of dark elegance, celebrating the vampire mythos in all its glory. The ball also includes lectures and discussions on vampire culture, history, lifestyle, providing space for education and community building. The fascination with vampires of New Orleans has spawned a thriving tourism industry, with vampire-themed shops, bars, and events catering to enthusiasts. Modern-day vampire fans often visit the city to participate in themed experiences, from vampire masquerades to candlelight tours of New Orleans myths and legends. As found in the Anne Rice Vampire Ball, even those skeptical of the supernatural can't help but be drawn into the gothic charm of New Orleans. The city's ability to weave together elements of New Orleans vampire stories, history, and culture ensures its legends endure forever. I would like to thank AmericanGhostWalks.com, New Orleans Legendary Walking Tours.com, and research for this episode. And thank you again for joining me in the wicked webs we weave. I appreciate everyone that's been listening and subscribing, and I love this very much. This is a great community we're building, and then once again, until we meet the Vampire Cafe on Royal Street in the French Quarter, see you again soon. Au revoir.